Hi everyone and welcome. Today is a very exciting day here at Verified First because we are joined by Lindsey Linder, VP of HR at Perlick Corporation, to discuss answering candidate demands, HR's new calling. This past year, we have spent our time having important conversations with some of America's most notable leaders in the HR and TA space. Through our HR at the Table Thought Leadership webinars, we've discussed the role of HR and TA has in DE&I, brand, technology, talent, culture, leadership, and so much more. Our goal is to bring relevant and timely topics to our HR and TA community that supports you in your roles. All of these topics can be accessed through our HR at the Table resources page on our website at verifiedfirst.com. With each webinar you watch, you can earn 1 SHRM and 1 HRCI credit. You also have the option to receive credit for attending today's webinar too. If these discussions are important to you, be sure to check out our HR at the Table calendar to keep up to date on topics we're talking about. We've also worked hard to bring you a comprehensive deep dive of all the topics we're discussed through this series. So if you'd like to gather more insight, be sure to check out our blog page, also at verifiedfirst.com. Now, before we dive into today's discussion, I'd like to discuss some housekeeping items. As I mentioned, this webinar is available for 1 SHRM and 1 HRCI credit. For our live attendees looking to receive credit, be sure to stick around for our post-webinar survey. If you're listening to this on demand, check your email for instructions on how to redeem your credit. Don't worry, this webinar is being recorded, so you can use it as a resource, pass it along to your coworkers, or watch it whenever you want. We'd love for you to utilize the chat function during this event to send in any questions that you have for our speakers. To prepare, let's practice now. In the chat feature, let us know where you're tuning in from and if this is your first time attending an HR at the Table event. With that in mind, I'd like to start by thanking Swipe Clocks for sponsoring this episode of HR at the Table and by officially welcoming everyone to today's discussion. Please send a friendly hello and a warm welcome in the chat to our HR at the Table host, Brianna Rosencrans, and Lindsey Linder, VP of HR at Perlick Corporation. Without further ado, take it away, Brianna.
Awesome. Well, hello everyone and welcome for first-time listeners, for the returners. I'd love to go ahead and see if you are a returning HR at the Table listener. So if you are, make sure to drop that in the chat. Now today, you're listening to episode 3 of the 2nd season of HR at the Table. And we're going to be talking about answering candidate demands, HR's new calling. With today's competitive talent market, it's more important than ever for HR and talent acquisition professionals to understand the demands of their audience, their candidates. The challenging thing is that what matters most to candidates is constantly evolving, and those nice-to-have benefits are now expectations. So today, we'll be discussing the current state of the talent market, benefits turned expectations of 2022, new and future forces that can impact candidate demands, and how to address those challenges facing talent acquisition professionals. And to have this discussion, I am pleased to introduce the Vice President of Human Resources at Perlick Corporation, Lindsey Linder. Lindsay, how's it going today?
I'm well. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. I am here in Kuna, Idaho, and it's been raining this morning, and I personally love the rain, so I am doing fantastic today. Now, Lindsay, I'd love for you to—
It's warmer here in Milwaukee, so that's good news.
Yeah, and you were saying it's sunny, right?
Yes, it is sunny. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, we're headed into that springtime, so I'm starting to feel that energy of spring. Awesome, Lindsay. Well, I'd love for you to go ahead and talk a little bit more about who you are, what it is that you do, and then a little bit more about Perlick Corporation.
Of course. So hello, everyone. It's great to see and meet you in this virtual session. I have the privilege of leading the human resources team here at Perlick. behind me, you'll see various flashing pictures intentionally of our products. For those of you who may not have heard of Perlick, Perlick is a 100-year-old organization that is in its 5th generation of ownership, so family owned and headquartered here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We have a 2-factory. We have a factory here in Milwaukee and a factory in Monterrey, Mexico, who really make sure that we serve our markets. For those of you who have not seen our products, you will, and you'll pay attention as you go to bars and restaurants, as well as maybe investing in something in your home. So we are a global manufacturer of commercial bar and beverage systems. So think stadium, think bar, think chain restaurant. If you look behind the bar, you're bound to see one of our back bars, under bars, tap systems. And then we also are a premium residential refrigeration and brewery fitting. So you'll see us in the homes over the last year with especially the COVID. We have seen a surge in our products going into homes to serve our customers as their home were in the last year with the pandemic and other challenges. I have been here at Perlick for 2.5 years, have worked mostly in manufacturing my entire career. Took a small stint before this in a different industry, but was excited to join a family organization, smaller in size, and be able to reframe an HR team to be more progressive in various spaces. So had the opportunity to come in here and move from a generalist structure for a period of time to a more targeted function where we have specialties, anywhere from total rewards to labor relations to talent and training. And so with that, we've been able to put in new technology, new capabilities, new processes that I think have allowed us to, for purposes of today's discussion, hire over 100 people last year with creative solutions, even though being small and challenged with the same things many of you are and my peers are challenged with. So it's been exciting about kind of a rebuild and being able to not only focus on, I'd say, talent from the external perspective, but building the talent too, which is something I think we'll talk about today as well.
Awesome, Lindsay. Well, it's wonderful to have you here, and I'm really excited to get your perspective, especially since you have overhauled your department in the last couple of years. So really looking forward to that perspective here. Now, I also want to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Brianna Rosenkrantz, and I am the Partner Marketing Manager here at Verified First, and I am also the 2022 season host of HR at the Table. So I would love for you to go ahead and follow along this journey as I interview wonderful HR and talent acquisition leaders like Lindsay. I see that some of you are some returning HR at the Table listeners, so I love to see that. I hope we can see that number increase after today's discussion. Now, with that, Lindsay, let's go ahead and get into it.
Okay.
So first, I want to go ahead and talk about today's current talent market. So Lindsay, based on your experience, how would you describe today's talent market?
Extremely competitive. I mean, we all know the terminologies that's being used. There's the threat of great resignation, whether it be associates choosing to maybe take another career path or just simply frustrated after a few years in the pandemic. I heard the talent shuffle the other day was a terminology I heard about people choosing to do things differently or move on in their career or move to different spots. So I think it's more competitive than ever. I think it's competitive in two senses: how you go to market and find new talent to join your organization, whether it to be building a new capability or backfilling a role or something along that lines. But I am equally spending as much time, if not more in some places, around building the talent we have internally. There are some parts of our business, specifically we're a manufacturing shop, considered our skilled roles. Everyone's out looking for the same capabilities. So it is going to be very difficult unless you have a really unique offering, and in some cases are paying the top wage to attract that talent. So I'm finding that our strategy around talent acquisition really focuses on the external, the new capabilities we need that we just don't have, and then what are those capabilities we can build internally through partnerships, through programs, through learning capabilities that we are starting to build here. And I'll take a person who's passionate any day to try and develop them. So trying to allow our associates to understand that's an opportunity for them, where I don't believe that has always been the case based on, just other priorities.
Right. So how would you describe the talent market from, today to 6 months ago to a year ago to 2 years ago?
2 years ago, I was just about when I was joining Perlick. So I would say it was the traditional that we're all used to, that it was very kind of, people were not leaving in droves, but however, people are making purposeful changes and making decisions. So I don't think the market was flooded with a lot of talent that was readily available. You had to really go out and source and seek, form those partnerships where you couldn't do it on your own. I think a year ago, I mean, for us specifically, that's in about the period, or I should say about March of this year, we really started ramping up on our recruitment again. Our business and industry had rebounded. So at that point, and what I've been finding, I'd say the last year to 6 months, is there's a lot more talent that is willing to knock on the door of Perlick, qualified talent. So in some cases, we've been able to do a lot on our own. When I say that, as recruiting as the core team here. In some cases, for unique positions or new skills that we're looking for, we've had to form partnerships, which have been instrumental. I will say in general, here at Perlick, we are not seeing the great resignation hit or the talent shuffle yet. But I think I'm hopeful that some of the programs we put into place are keeping people engaged. So from a talent perspective internally, which I think is part of my pool to continue to draw from, I think we've ideally stabilized and created reasons for people to stay and grow their careers here at Perlick. And we have a ways to go. Just started, but in the last couple of years, but definitely some more capabilities in place to support them too. So I look at it both ways, but I'd say these days we're getting a lot of new qualified talent from the market, which has been exciting to see. And they're knocking on Perlick's door. I do expect that in a year, maybe year and a half, it will revert back to maybe a bit more what it was before. And we're starting to put in and really think about our employer value proposition. What does it mean to be here at Perlick? Why join the Perlick team? So while I think we're in a bit of a good position for talent to come knocking, I don't think that's always going to be the case. So how can you use this time to build that capability?
Yeah, Lindsay, I'm excited to uncover the secrets that you've been able to find in your organization. So hopefully we can help some of the callers online today to talk through how they can implement the same types of strategic initiatives in their organization as well. Now, in comparison to where the talent market was at 2 years ago, it's actually kind of interesting because, believe it or not, the pandemic has been happening for 2 years. And during that time, with the uncertainty of the pandemic, a lot of people actually sheltered in place in their jobs because of fear of economic uncertainty. And so we saw a lot of those employees kind of clinging to their positions to make sure that, they and their families were secure during this time. And like you said, Lindsay, we've been seeing now that we have already understood what the economic repercussions are to the pandemic. People have a good understanding of, what's happening here. So now they are comfortable and they are participating in the Great Resignation. And there's no longer the need to shelter in place because we've kind of gone back to normal, a sense of normalcy when it comes to the pandemic here. And so it's interesting to see that dynamic between the shelter in place of employees versus now that idea that they're looking for corporations that, their values match and company culture matches. So that's actually something, Lindsay, that I'm really curious to talk about is in terms of that company culture, what do you think those non-negotiables are for when candidates are searching for those valuable components in company culture?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak from my vantage point. We're a smaller company, family owned. I do think that as we're shaping our employer value proposition and being more intentional about that, I think for challenges for Perlick, for example, is we are, you drive by our building and people have seen our building, but you don't know what we do. We're a luxury brand that you can see at, for those of you who are joining from maybe the Milwaukee area, Wisconsin area, Pfizer Forum, the Green Bay Packers Stadium. we're in places that you want people to know our products, but they drive by our building and don't know what we do. So we've got anything from brick and mortar, how do you get the signage on the street to tell your story, to being out in community and in purposely connecting, whether it be our executives, whether it be the family, whether it be our associates to community. I am seeing an uptick in referrals from our associates as well. So that, to me, culture is about family here. And so some of what I would encourage from a culture perspective is telling your message through your people. So making sure you've got, your value set, your mission, your vision squared away to where it's resonating. Do I think we're 100% there? No. I think we're on our journey, but making sure they understand what it means to join at Perlick, because they can be the people that are out doing your TA and effort in the community without you having to do that. We've had to kind of revisit what does fit look like here. And when I say that from a culture perspective, that goes back to that internal-external conversation. So the culture we want here at Perlick is around engaged associates. We want to make sure we're doing a better job of onboarding our associates. So we've put a lot of effort into getting new associates acclimated and comfortable and productive in their performance as quickly as possible. So that's required training programs, different onboarding capabilities, and things like that. So for us, our culture is still evolving. We consider ourselves a growth company, and so how do you migrate from and make sure you maintain that family feel? People know each other's names. They're able to connect on that personal level, but while scaling that for the future. So I think that's the greatest challenge we have. But I would say those would be some of the things that we focused on from a culture: engagement, understanding your current employee set, understanding what gets your new associates acclimated and feeling comfortable sooner, messaging in the community to make sure people know what you do so they can be good stewards of your business, sharing your message. Those are probably the three that I'd say we've worked most intentionally on in the last year.
Yeah, Lindsay, you were talking about onboarding, and I love that your organization is focusing on that onboarding component. There was actually a study I read that onboarding is one of the key components in terms of retaining your employees. But despite that, a lot of employees actually hate their onboarding experience and don't feel like they've been given the necessary tools or resources to succeed. So I think that onboarding plays a huge role in terms of that retention piece there.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a ways to go. I think where we've started, we're on 1.0, need to get to 2.0 in terms of our versions of it. Some of it's been leveraging technology, which we've invested in a new technology to help with more of get the paperwork out of the way, get them access to, whether it be videos or key information in advance of starting, whether you're shop or office. That's going to be our big plug this year to take that away. We've focused our on-site first 2 days specifically around what do you need to know in order to kind of navigate the system, anywhere from a plant tour to conversing on things that matter to the associate, whether it's their benefits, who makes up our board of directors, who are our key people in the organization they can connect with, to day 2 being all about our business. We have a residential, commercial, and parts business. Every associate needs to understand what their part is, even if they're in finance, to HR, to on the floor. So trying to make it topics that don't overwhelm, but create an awareness early on, and then put a lot more accountability on our managers to carry that forward, which is a big part of our engagement effort this year.
Yeah. Well, that is amazing stuff. I think that that's something that can be forgotten, especially with how much paperwork can be involved with the transition of employees from hiring them to retaining them and getting their paperwork in order. So I'm excited to hear about your technology question or your technology perspective here in a couple slides. But with that, I want to go ahead and actually ask our first poll question today, and I'm going to go ahead and launch this here. So as we move throughout today's discussion, I'd like to understand from the audience here, what is on your HR and talent acquisition wish list? Is it reducing time to fill, improving that quality of hire, increasing compliance, improving onboarding efficiency, or elevating candidate engagement? Now, Lindsay, if you were filling out this poll question, what would you select and why?
My biggest ask, my biggest wish, If I could go retrospective and think about 2 years ago when I would have started, I wish I would have put more emphasis, or could have put more emphasis through my structure on building the talent, especially in our shop. I think we're all realizing a lot of pain right now, given there's a limited pool of available talent. So my wish would have been, in retrospect, putting more emphasis on our learning platforms and our trainee programs to make sure that we could have been ready for the surge that we had, that we just weren't prepared for. We weren't completely ready for. We're doing a lot now, but that would have been my wish list thing, is more trainee programs readily available to grow your own talent.
Okay, awesome. And I'm excited to hear how you prepared yourself for that surge. All right. Looks like we've got 50% voted here, so I'm going to give it a couple more seconds while everyone answers to close out the poll. All right. Let's go ahead and look at those results here. And Lindsay, I'm curious to see if anything here is surprising to you at all. So it looks like we had 53% voted to reduce time to fill, 55% improving quality of hire, 12% getting more compliant processes in place, 39% an effective onboarding process, and 45% increasing candidate engagement. So Lindsay, any surprising information here?
No, I think quality of hire has been something that we've been talking about as HR professionals for several years. What that measurement and metric has always been a moving target. So not surprised that, especially as we're trying to retain people for longer, that continues to be a great challenge. For time to fill is upon all of us, depending on what position you're filling. So no, I would say I'm in line with many of these pieces, and think we've been able to successfully move the needle on the first one, and happy to share a little bit about that.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear it. Now, I want to go ahead and talk a little bit more about the here and the now, the candidate expectations in 2022. So, Lindsay, with your experience, how have those candidate expectations evolved in today's talent market?
I think for specifically our office positions or professional positions, clearly the hybrid work or complete remote work has been something that has either been required or now being considered as a requirement. So I said hybrid work, getting more and more questions about how do you ensure that there's a balance between that innovation, collaboration in the office, especially as you're connected for us to manufacturing, to allowing people the flexibility to work how they want to work. So that's probably one of the number ones for our office. I'd say that from the standpoint of other things that I've seen is more around some elements of compensation. I think, again, candidates can command more now, even with the skills being maybe less than what you would typically have gone after. So then you have to assess whether that person has that learnability factor, that ability to ramp up quick enough. So we've been dealing with, blowing out our budget on some positions and saying, okay, where do we make up for that? But this is the person we need, even if it's for a shorter period of time. A lot more conversations on DE&I happening, diversity, equity, inclusion. People want to know about how your organization is showing up in those spaces, in the community, in how you operate, your culture. Culture questions continue to be shaped all the time, and making sure our managers, have a position on that's consistent to our values. So I'd say those are the top three things that routinely we're working with here at Perlick.
Right. And you were talking about some of those salary demands that candidates are having. So when it comes to organizations who might not be able to have the financial resources to invest in additional salary for a candidate, what other types of benefit packages do you think could be beneficial for these organizations to implement?
Sure. It's always about getting creative. In some cases, we have something cool called Factory Seconds. So you can buy a Perlick as an employee for a significantly discounted rate. Talk about a great present for Christmas to a family member or something like that. So sometimes it's leveraging your product and allowing associates to have access to it in a cool, unique way. I think sometimes it's around time off, in terms of, do you look at your policy and allow the modification? I think time off is becoming more and more important, depending on what role, what flexibility do you have. I think around that hybrid work environment, And so, knowing that are you more open to recruiting from outside of maybe your state, your city that you normally go after by allowing yourself to be more open? Can you get candidates that are well qualified to what you need and they meet more within your salary range? As factors that I would consider. So how can you leverage your products? How can you, look at your recruiting strategy or your talent strategy differently to get, some qualified? And then I would always say, using your employees. I think that there's a sense that we have here at Perlick. We've got 5 generations of family. We have several generations of employees. It's about connecting to your future candidates through your existing employees. There's a sense of, I want to work with people that I like, that I want to work with, that you can't put a price tag on. So I do think that thinking creatively around leveraging those programs can be a unique differentiator in a very competitive market.
Yeah, absolutely, Lindsay. We actually had a conversation with Min Hua from Stanley Black & Decker back in January, and we were talking about the Davids versus the Goliaths in terms of competing for talent. And what it really came down to was this smaller organization leveraging their resources, like telling their story or getting that employee buy-in to then act as another form of, whether it's, word of mouth referrals or whatnot, to really increase the amount of attention brought to the organization through its employees so that there's a really good perspective that the candidates can actually get from that side as well. So
Absolutely.
When it comes to those smaller organizations competing with those larger organizations for that talent, what do you think those key attributes are?
Attributes of the organization. I do think for those of us that are smaller, it's about why come to a smaller organization? What does it offer you? We like to try and routinely sell that career pathing in terms of having access to maybe more cross-functional experience in a little bit of an easier way. Not to say you can't achieve that in a bigger organization, but it's about, breadth and scope. You can touch a lot of different things, knowing that there's less people. So how can you kind of commit to a development plan that allows them to do that? I think, going back to our culture conversation, I do think we do fun things like we have a beer garden. So go out in the beer garden and just having good casual conversations with people to stay connected. Again, it goes to that feeling of belonging here at work, and I'm included, and my ideas matter. It's things like having associate suggestion programs. How can people feel heard and then responded to? Again, you want those people that want to be here, and those type of things allow people to feel connected and heard and moving things forward. So I would say some of those things have been instrumental in engaging and re-engaging, I guess, associates and doing that little bit of the sell. Why come here to a small organization where, yes, the money may be less in some capacity, but selling the package. But also knowing that you can grow your career differently than maybe at a bigger organization where there's more of a kind of, you stay within your function in your swim lanes. Whereas here, my team members are routinely, my labor relations manager routinely pulled into operations conversations, so he gets to kind of use his mind differently, not just focused on certain things. So I think that those sells, and that's where the manager comes into being such a critical part of the interviewing and onboarding process. They are your extension of that sell and that commitment. It can't be just HR alone. So often it gets pegged to us to come up with a framework and then own it. I challenge to say, yes, we can do those things, but only with the right manager's support. So managers buy into that, and continued effort on that is important.
Yeah, you were talking a little bit about career pathing as one of your cells for your organization here. So we actually have a question from the audience from Heather. So thank you, Heather, for your question. And they wanted to inquire a little bit more about the mentorship program that you were talking about earlier, and if you have a formalized program or what those mentorship opportunities look like.
Sure. So we have a couple of things that, kind of early in the process, but for our onboarding process, we do have and introduced a little bit of a buddy system. So that's more of that casual, informal, who can you go to just ask a question? Because we all know we start an organization, we can easily get embarrassed by asking the wrong question to the wrong person. So we do have that. We are underway in actually setting up, and we just checked in with two of our mentor and mentee on a formal mentoring program. And so how we ran this was through, I have a team member, a talent and training manager. This person had raised their hand. They had said, I'm interested in such career path. We said, great. They had the capabilities to learn it, the will, the ability to. And so we actually partnered and sat down with the mentor and mentee, set the ground rules, the guidelines. Again, stressed that it was more important that they connect, but that they had to have an agenda. It wasn't just meet me every month for coffee and we'll try and talk about things. So every month we walk through, our talent and training manager walks through, how are they doing on that agenda? Are we getting closer to making that person more ready for their next career path or not? And what are the obstacles? What are the things we have to add to the plan that we haven't thought about? So I would say it's important to have formalities, but not let formalities get in between great people. What I can give with this example is the mentor is taking ownership, setting the agenda from the standpoint of making sure the conversations are advancing that person. And so you have to have the right people in the role. So if someone's doing it because they were tapped, and they're really not interested, I'd say it's not going to work. But having that framework just to get both sides bought in, we did have them kind of acknowledge an agreement. This is a committed thing we're doing. So anywhere from the buddy system to a formal mentoring, and then we put a lot on our managers to come up with development plans and challenge them as part of someone's what we call IDP, individual development plan, to identify in someone's development plan where they need some cross-functional development and being intentional about making that connection for that person. So not just lobbying and saying, oh, we'll do it. So we've done it, I'd say, in those three primary ways in order to meet the needs of different people. And then on the shop, from a perspective, we've invested more into specifically LinkedIn Learning and helping them build their skills under the mentorship of my talent and training manager and myself, so that they can be more ready for their next opportunity. So a few different ways that we've been successful in building talent capabilities.
Yeah, Lindsay, I absolutely love that. I think that having that career pathing component is so crucial. You know, here at Verified First, we do have those career development meetings as well with our supervisors, and it gives the opportunity for us to provide structure to a conversation about where we'd like to move in our careers. So we talk about our personal values, our professional values, what types of strengths we have or weaknesses that we want to improve on, and it gives that structure to have that conversation with leadership so that they can help you along with your journey. So I love that Perlick is thinking about that.
I'd also offer that you have to clarify whose role is what. I mean, so often it's put on the manager or the HR professional, you need to develop me. I'm a big proponent of you develop yourself. So making sure your company's philosophy around how to engage and how to take charge is clarified. I believe, you know, I am where I am because I took charge in terms of being committed to a path and asking for opportunities, but I also understood that respectfully I had to understand what my manager had for me. So it's a balance. So I think sometimes it's clarifying expectations of associates will allow associates to bloom and lean in a bit more. So.
Right, absolutely. Bloom and lean in. I think that's fantastic to remember here. Thank you for that question, Heather. Now we have another question here from Megan, and she wants to know a little bit more about your onboarding process that you were talking about and wants to understand if you do onboarding in groups.
We do. Great question. We've debated that. So we do it every 2 weeks deliberately for the reasons of a couple of reasons. We want to have a cohort-based program. We believe that community and culture and all that starts with the new people you start with. So we want them to feel like they have a family within the family. So we do wait, and we do it shop and office together. So we really want it to be a community in totality. There are parts of the onboarding. We have a break off for some shop policies and programs versus office, but we're very deliberate in keeping them together for the business overview part, meeting the CEO, getting a plant tour, learning about the family history, what's our residential product, what's our commercial product. So most of it is done together intentionally. So we do it every 2 weeks. It's a committed day and a half. That gives the ability to block the calendars of our key speakers. We're asking time from anywhere from our CEO to myself to some other of our leaders. So it allows us to be purposeful about making sure that they can show up, or if they can't, we have an alternative without inundating and just splashing things on people's calendars. We found that to be, you know, and then someone would show up saying, what am I here for? You know, why am I doing this? They have a set calendar before they start. They know what that first day and a half they can expect. And ideally, they make some friends or some tighter relationships with their colleagues in the meantime by onboarding that way. So we've gotten very rave reviews about that. Clearly, there's some opportunities in terms of the content we continue to want to revise. But from I joined when we did paperwork and that's it, to where we're at right now, certainly something that feels more ready for that candidate to start. We actually have started introducing, and maybe something to consider, many of our associates were here and did the same thing I did. They got their paperwork and they joined the organization, and they never had the benefit of the history of the family or the overviews of the business. So we trickle in some of our existing employees into that onboarding too, that can give them the benefit of that content that they weren't privileged to have when they joined the organization.
So Lindsay, you talked about making friends in the workplace, and I actually want to dig into that a little bit more. We had a webinar back, I think it was last November or December, and we were talking about candidate expectations moving forward in 2022. And a representative was actually talking about how there is a study done that people actually are more willing to leave their organization when they no longer have friends there, or if they don't have friends. Mm-hmm. Especially in this remote workplace, it can be kind of hard or challenging to, you know, make that connection. So with Perlick, outside of the onboarding experience, what other types of activities are you promoting to encourage relationships amongst coworkers?
Some of the things we're doing intentionally. So we are going to remain in a hybrid work environment, but we've introduced the beer garden, which we have happy hours, kind of convenient when you have the product and just need to pour the beer. So makes it easier for us. But we have a beer garden, so a social area. You know, throughout the year, we do have set employee events, you know, maybe a picnic or some bigger event throughout the year, a baseball game. So we do some of those intentional engagement activities that are fun. I think from a standpoint of part of the role of a manager here and what we're driving is engagement at the functional level. So while we're part of a broader community as Perlick, a lot happens within your group. They're the people that you typically work with the most. So do you know them? You know, what are engagement activities? So in the HR team, for example, we've chosen, we want to every month have time together. It could be a learning opportunity. We went down to Chicago and saw our products in action in the Chicago market. And then the next month we just went to have lunch and we played a game about get to know each other. So those type of things we've held managers and are going to continue holding our managers accountable to coming up with engagement conversations within the function. I also believe a big proponent of what you were saying, a manager plays a critical role whether someone stays or leaves. And then we do have opportunities where we do a town hall every quarter. So we all get to learn about the business, ask questions. We have cool things like 5 Things to Know, which is a newsletter where people can ask questions, share content, and it's a way of creating connectivity. And then more recently, we put more emphasis on Perlick Awards, which are truly intended to recognize cross-functional efforts. So by promoting and encouraging and recognizing and rewarding those cross-functional efforts through a formal awards program, you can see people are connecting maybe where they wouldn't have before and encouraging that behavior. So those would be some of the things that we've tried and continue to modify as we're going along.
Yeah, Lindsay, I like that Perlick is thinking so much about that employee engagement because, you know, as we're talking about meeting these candidate demands, you know, some of the main things that you were talking about is those salary expectations, and the ability to create this company culture has the potential to kind of outweigh those salary expectations because of the experience that you're creating there at Perlick. So sounds like you are up to some really good things over there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I've done personally, I'm not recommending it's for every organization, but we've had to get creative in terms of how to, especially when you're talent acquisition outside our 4 walls. I actually personally, I don't have a TA person or a talent acquisition person. You are looking at it for all office positions. our generalist and manager handle the shop. But I'm on the phone very early in the process with candidates to tell our story. And so I've been intentional about that, of being part of the process throughout, so they feel that care from above, that, that sometimes you're like, oh, that HR person, that executive person. So putting a lot of that. And also, because we've had so many open positions this last year, I've partnered with an outside couple agencies to help me with phone screening that I feel represent me and represent our Perlick community, represent our culture, to get them through the process quickly, get the information we need from them, tell them our story so that they can quickly get into the process. So small organizations have they don't have as many resources. Like I said, I don't have a TA person, but what I've decided to do is supplement with ways to not sacrifice our ability to get talent.
Right. So Lindsay, I'm going to piece together a couple words you said here, and that is intentional care from above. And that's actually something that is a current candidate demand right now, is for candidates to have more access to leadership, because that gives them the opportunity to participate in more growth, career development type conversations. So with that, I want to go ahead and talk a little bit more about the future of candidate demands and where we expect that to go as well. So we're going to make a couple predictions here. But Lindsay, I want to hear from you first. What is next for candidate demands?
I think where we're at for a little bit, it's going to be around, can an organization make sure that they're telling their story in a concise way? That, some organizations candidates have so many opportunities. So how do you differentiate yourself? I think it's around the experience they have in not only, applying. Do you have the social outlets? Do you have the ways to connect with Perlick or your organization quickly? I think then it quickly moves to what's their experience through the process, because they want to know that it's a community they want to belong to. They want to belong to from a career perspective, just from, again, people they want to work with, the opportunities that are going to grow their skill set. So I believe it's going to become even more important for HR teams to challenge, to help their managers play a critical role in that, but also having pieces like technology very early in the process to push out your story, to get connected with people, and think about how you manage that process up front. So I think the challenge for us is that, and then on the alternative end is telling your story as much internally to your associates here. Why stay here? Why grow here? Why engage here? I think one of the functions that I've added in the last year that we didn't have prior, it used to be, again, a function of just HR, you do it, is the internal communications piece. I think that's going to be instrumental to being able to get your message out more succinctly internally, but also we're going to start working in the next year and a half on that external message. How do you bundle up what you've done internally and share it with the outside community so that people are like, I know about that organization. I want to be a part of it when the, let's call it the Great Resignation or the talent shuffle simmers down. You're going to go back to needing to source candidates, get your story out there, and I believe those are capabilities you should be building today so you're ready.
Yeah, Lindsay, when it comes to the type of new demands that have come into the market within the last 2 years, do you think that those are here to stay?
I do think the hybrid workforce is something that we'll all be facing, and somewhat in some it's not even hybrid. Some people want purely remote. I think knowing that you have to open your leadership's eyes and about maybe attracting from outside the state to get the talent you want, and dealing with the compliance that comes with that as an HR professional has to be something you give some sincere thought to. So I do think we're all going to be, and then growing your talent. I do believe in several cases within Perlick, we will not be buying new talent. We will be building new talent, and we have to be ready that the market that's around us is super competitive in some positions, and there's just not going to be talent that's just going to be at the ready. So you got to come with the best position and start building it, and then ideally that attracts new people to come and continue to build. So I think it's external, but I also think it's internal. You got to keep the talent that you have to build the what you need for the future too.
Lindsay, that is fantastic. Rather than buying talent, it's about building talent. So we talked about a couple ways that Perlick is doing that through career pathing, through creating that candidate engagement. What other recommendations would you have for organizations, or what type of processes do you recommend they participate in to build that talent?
I think you have to have ways for people to raise their hand. So, for example, I'll give an example of our shop associates. We've promoted probably 5 to 10 associates from the shop, non-degreed in many cases, to positions that either support operations or in the office. And it really came down to coming up, understanding what they're trying to do and supporting them through that. I will take any person who's willing to learn and develop and commit the time and personally spend time with them. It's something that my talent and training manager says, Lindsay, this is a project that you won't let go of. And I said, I'm just really passionate about it because it's something that we need. So I think it's about giving them the ability to raise their hand, apply for the job. And it's not simply about having that, okay, you applied, okay, you're not qualified conversation. It's about telling them why they're not qualified and then giving them capabilities to get qualified. And if they take advantage of those, boom, you've got something, you've got a recipe for success. I think that you can then lean into their abilities, build their capabilities, connect them with people. So the next time that opportunity is open, it's not a no, it's a yes. And we've seen success with that. I think some of it is about building new training programs to get more people ready quicker, faster, and building that as well. I will also say, from a building talent perspective, going back to our early part of the conversation, it's about clarifying what role they play in the mix. So again, if people are coming to your organization waiting to be developed, I just don't think it's ever going to be a winning strategy. Put them in the driver's seat. So we have capabilities like LinkedIn Learning. You want to learn new skill sets, or part of your development is to learn new skill sets. There's something that's ready for you. We've done talent segmentation around succession and other things, high potential talent. So we give additional talent opportunities or capabilities to or outside resources to a certain amount of talent in order to make sure that they're ready for the next thing we want them to be ready for. So I think it's about getting creative. In one case, one of our employees had applied for a supervisor job, I want to say 2 times, and still wasn't ready. So we created a supervisor and training program because we knew this wasn't going to be the only time this was going to happen. So how do you get creative with the traditional designs and positions you have within your organization to break down those barriers for people to grow in their career, knowing they've got the heart, the passion, the desire to grow with you.
Right. So Lindsay, you're talking about filling that funnel. First off, it comes down to filling the funnel of the people who are applying to your organization through telling your story. And then once they've applied, keeping that relationship with them so that when they're ready, they are still thinking of Perlick here. So with that, Lindsay, I'm curious, does Perlick participate in any type of alumni programs at all to potentially, after employees have left the organization, some sort of program that encourages them to come back, or a system in place that when they're ready to come back, they have the opportunity to do so?
I'd say we are not intentional around a program yet. I mean, that's a great perspective and something that we definitely want and need to talk about. A lot of it has been around really putting our intentional effort around the associates that are here today to engage them, because that was something that was the greatest gap when I had arrived. So no, I would say we don't have anything formal in place. I will tell you that it has happened during my time here where people have left and come back, and I think the differentiator that in those circumstances is why come back to Perlick? Why can we attract them back to Perlick? Again, it goes back to that we're a smaller organization that they can build relationships in, and they miss those sometimes when they leave the organization. But it's also about telling them what's different when they come back. So I think that we have more opportunity, but based on not having as much turnover, and knock on wood, and everything in this last little bit, we haven't had to put a lot of time and effort into it, but something that I do suspect as a future prediction or future effort that me and my team have to spend time on is how do you stay connected to that talent that you didn't want to lose? How do you stay connected and say, we understand you had to make a choice? I think one of the ways that you keep that door open which we have spent time on, is that exit conversation. I personally do a lot of those. I want to hear from them, but I'm also, I like to think I also give them comfort in that I'm happy for them if they've found something that puts them in their next career. I don't think it's not a place to shame. I don't think it's a place to make them feel guilty. I think it's a way of having a conversation. So one way that I think we're doing that day to keep that door open is having effective exit interviews. So they're sent off in a way that makes them think, wow, I was treated really well, and maybe I consider coming back to Perlick.
Yeah. Lindsay, back last January, we actually had a conversation with Elizabeth Varghese at IBM. And one thing that we talked about in terms of this reinvention of HR is that HR is, moving away, like I said earlier, from those taskmaster type positions to more of an influential leader in the organization to kind of help that business success and sustainability. And one of those factors was getting creative with their talent acquisition and recruitment and retention strategy, like you've been talking about. And we touched on this a little bit in terms of, what HR's new calling is. And from what it sounds like, one of those key components is storytelling. And then another feature here is to think outside the box with your practices. So when it comes to recruiting your talent and meeting these candidate demands and competing in such a competitive talent market, one thing that is, a question for many people is finding, the right people with the right skills to come into your organization. But Lindsay, from your perspective, when you see a great candidate and maybe they don't necessarily have the skills, what types of programs or processes in addition do you have in place for situations like that? Do you think that, degrees are necessary for every position, or is that something that, can be taught here?
So I think you have to get creative. I think you're spot on. I think some things that we've taken is, for example, let's just say we have an engineering career ladder. We've introduced a lower level called an associate, meaning in that case they would not have to be necessarily degreed at a bachelor level. So I think sometimes you have to look at your system, seeing what talent's in the market. There's been several times where we've gone to market for a candidate or a position and realized that the market is not making that type of talent available at that level. All the people in the 5-year mark are sticking with their company, but we can find a lot of, let's call it 3-year people. So what do? You don't want to disengage your existing associates that might be at a similar title that have more experience, but you need that talent because you can see that they can progress. So it's whether it's introducing a new level within your career ladder and saying, okay, this is intentional. To do that, I think that's one of the creative solutions that I've had to lean on in this last little bit to go after talent specifically, and I think that you have to be open to that.
Yeah. Lindsay, as we're talking about HR's new calling, it's important that there is a support system for them to be able to answer this calling here. So I want to go ahead and launch this next poll question here, and let's go ahead and launch that. So, we know that keeping up with candidate demands can be very time consuming, which is why it's important to streamline those inefficient processes so that you and your team can focus on those value added initiatives. And one way to do so is through that technology component. So I'd like to get a read from the audience here and understand what areas of technology are you looking to adopt or replace within the next 3 months? Is it an ATS, CRM, background screening, assessment, or maybe there's no replacements at all? Maybe you already have a really great tech stack in place. Now, Lindsay, again, I'd love to, throw this poll question back to you here. If you were answering this question, what does your organization need or want in your HR solutions tech stack?
So when I joined the organization, we basically had a posting capability. That was pretty much it. So we've invested. We've decided to go to UKG or the ultimate Kronos and have a more ATS system to where we can track, manage, and do things to the system that take a candidate from the time they apply through onboarding. So it's really, for us, it's been about not just focusing on the experience of recruitment, but that onboarding in totality experience. So I would offer that for us, we've invested in a solution that we feel will allow us to be more efficient, effective, not just from recruiting, but through the process. I'd also offer, I think, reference checks have mixed reviews. You call up someone that someone put on their list and said, hey, I put this person that knows me well. They're bound to say good things. But we've tested a new couple of capabilities, one being skill survey, which I've really enjoyed because it's an electronic push to your references. And I'm finding that references are being far more candid about the strengths and opportunities about people because, again, you're doing it on a computer. Sometimes that intimidation of that conversation, don't want to mucky anything up for a person. People are just offering more candor, and we're finding it to be something great to then I can use during the final interviews to probe further on. So for us, it's been around having that onboarding broader experience, including the ATS, and then I'd say a piece is around references where we've made greatest investments.
Right. Well, thank you for providing that context, Lindsay. Now it looks like we're at 57% voted here. So I want to go ahead and provide a little bit more context around this poll question here. So we are partnering with a third-party researcher, Aptitude Research, and they produce the Talent Acquisition Technology Buyer's Guide. So this guide gives more insight into the type of talent acquisition technology that organizations are looking into and what type of solutions or problems that they're trying to uncover with this technology. So highly encourage you to check out that guide. We have it on verifiedfirst.com. Also, with that, we are actually interviewing an analyst from Aptitude Research next month for HR at the Table. So highly encourage you to attend that, and we will be talking about the state of talent acquisition for 2022. Now, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll here. Now, one thing that we've seen is that as HR has answered their new calling is that they're moving further away from being those taskmasters and becoming more of those strategic leaders. Like I was saying, you know, they're more involved in the organization's business success and sustainability moving forward. And so we've actually seen a really big shift towards these HR and TA professionals adopting more of that technology so they can keep up with those candidate demands. So while we're talking about talent acquisition professionals, I want to go ahead and talk about the current challenges that they're facing today and how they can overcome that. So with that, you know, Lindsay, how has the current talent market shifted the talent acquisition position?
I think depending on what size organization you are, I think a good talent acquisition professional has elements of HR in them. I think you have to understand the total candidate experience. So it's stepping back, and like I said before, it's about talent internally as well as talent externally. So I think great TA professionals are understanding their pool is on both sides. So how are they fostering that internally to know that, hey, you know, I don't have to go on the outside for that next job. There are people that we know in the pipeline, so keeping connected directly with the talent or through their talent management professionals on their team. Externally, I think from that perspective is, again, you know, having that strong pool that you can go to, connect with people that may be able to put you in connection with that next person that might be right for your opportunity. So I do think continued networking as a talent acquisition professional, but I would offer that I think TA professionals that are probably excelling are the ones that are thinking about the system in totality. It's not just about the front end of the process, but what happens throughout the experience. Because the more they understand there, the more they're able to influence those processes and understand them. I think they're gonna sell better to the candidate. They're gonna be able to tell the story a little bit better, not just simply on the front end, maybe be in the screening process or the first steps in the interview process. Understand the system, help build the system so you can be, it's something that you can make sure you can tell the candidate on the front end as a differentiator for your organization.
Awesome. So Lindsay, as we close out today's discussion, what is one thing that listeners should take away from this discussion?
It's a crazy market. You know, you got to be patient. I think the big three things I would say is get creative about your solutions. Allow others to give you feedback. You know, sometimes we get in our HR space, so seek others' feedback from outside of HR. Think as a system, so understand what you're doing and understand the systemic, you know, impact you're going to drive on changing one process to the next. Don't be kind of tunnel vision, because I do think when you fix one problem, it maybe uncovers another. So think about what you're trying to do in totality. And from that perspective, don't forget to have fun in our jobs. I mean, I think the last 2 years has been a trying time and continues to be a trying time for HR and TA professionals. Make sure that there's elements that bring you in every day. So whether it's leading the talent process on the internal candidates because it gives you great passion. Find those things that give you, fun and pleasure in a time where, we've been leaned on heavily and continue to be so.
Awesome, Lindsay. Well, this has been a great conversation today, and I want to thank you for providing your insight into what HR's new calling is. I also want to thank the audience for your time today as well. Now, with that, I want to go ahead and provide some contact information if you're interested in reaching out. Lindsay has graciously allowed us to put her LinkedIn information on here. So if you are interested in hearing about more of Lindsay's strategies, if you have any questions for her, please feel free to connect with her, network, whatnot. Now, if you're interested in hearing more about Verified First, please find our contact information on the screen here. And then also we have contact information for our sponsors over at Swipe Clock. Now, just stick around just a little bit longer for information on how to redeem that SHRM and HRCI credit.
Well, that about wraps it up for today's discussion. I want to thank everyone for your attendance today, our guest Lindsay from Perlick Corporation, our host Brianna, and especially our sponsor Swipe Clock for making this episode of HR at the Table possible. We'd love to hear what you think about our webinar today, so make sure to leave us some feedback on our post-webinar survey. We'll be sending out the webinar on demand just in case you want to use this for a reference or send it to a colleague. For our live attendees today, stick around for a little longer for our post-webinar survey to redeem one SHRM and/or one HRCI credit. For any on-demand listeners, check your email for instructions on how to redeem your credit. Next, we'll be hosting the founder of Aptitude Research on the State of Talent Acquisition Tech 2022 Trends. We hope you can make it, and we will see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
Bye.